Senator Scullion.
Thank you, Mr President. I rise to offer the Nationals and my own most sincerest condolences to Mr Rhonda Evans and their family. Harry Evans was an institution in the Australian parliamentary system, a man of rare abilities who put them at the service of his country. In 1967, Harry commenced as a librarian in training with the Parliamentary Library on a salary of just $3,239 per year. By 1969, he'd come to the attention of the legendary Jim Odgers, Clerk of the Senate, who wanted to bring out a new edition of his Australian Senate practice. Odgers was looking for a good researcher to work with him on a project. Harry, with his strong interest in history, applied for and got the job. It was this promotion that set up his mastery of Senate practice and 40 years of it. Harry was one of the finest of the new clerk assistants and was responsible for the committee office until he returned to the procedure office in 1985 before being promoted to deputy clerk in 1987. In 1998 he was promoted to clerk of the Senate. It is the mark of a man that his retirement should occasion a glowing farewell in the usually dry annual report of the Department of Senate from 2009-2010. I'd like to read an extract from this. After more than 40 years of service to the Senate, Harry Evans' contribution can be measured in much greater terms than simply time served. A renowned expert on parliamentary privilege, Harry was the principal critic of the judgments of Mr Justice Cantor, Mr Justice Hunt in the case of Crown v Murphy, which were the catalyst for the enactment of the Parliamentary Privileges Act of 1987. His next challenge was to rationalise the Senate's standing orders, transforming them, as we've already heard today, from what some would describe as fairly antiquated and motley collection into a rational body of rules written in plain English and appropriate for a modern parliament. Whilst the revised standing orders were a codification of existing practice, they contain many examples of Harry's formidable capacity for reducing complicated things to simple and clear prescriptions. The report goes on. There are many other examples of his ability to devise and draft procedures to give effect to senators' desires to see the Senate performing its functions more effectively. Also formidable is Harry's body of writing on parliamentary matters. In 1994, he produced a new version of the classic text, the Australian Senate Practice, renamed as Odgers' Australian Senate Practice after its first author and Clerk of the Senate from 1965 to 1979, Jim Odgers. During his time as Clerk of the Senate, Harry produced 6 editions of this major parliamentary work, ensuring the availability of the most up-to-date information about the evolving Senate, its constitutional position and its procedures. The book, as he fondly called it, remained as a testament to his endeavours to promote the institution of Parliament and the Senate in particular. As one of the last bulwarks against executive domination, a collection of his other writings was published in February of 2010 as a special issue of the departmental's journal, Papers on Parliament. Senators paid tribute to their retiring clerk on the 19th of November in 2009, and a recurring theme was the independence and impartiality which Harry Evans brought to the performance of his office and the fearlessness with which he defended the powers and the roles of the Senate. While his advice was not always appreciated by governments, Harry achieved the distinction of being criticised by governments of all complexions and equally, I suspect, respected by all. The department's annual report also says, as the Chief Executive Officer, Harry Evans also represented the highest standards of ethical leadership, probity and the pursuit of value for money on behalf of the taxpayer. The Senate committee inquiry process remains one of the most cost-effective means of scrutinising government's policies, operations and legislative proposals, and the committee office operates at a fraction of the cost of such agencies as the Productivity Commission or the Australian National Audit Office. Our current clerk, Rosemary Lang, described Harry as a shy and modest man who led by example. She said, "We remember him as a generous mentor to all of us who wanted to learn about the Senate and its procedure. As an administrator, he was not afraid to make a decision, and his efficiency in clearing paperwork was legendary. He also possessed a wry sense of humour that many of his colleagues will long remember." Harry Evans was an astute observer of the parliamentary system, saying in his last Senate lecture in 2009 that knowledge has always been power, but the management of information has been the key to government. Now, I came to this place at the same time as the Leader of the Opposition in 2002, and almost immediately after taking my place in Parliament, Harry brought to my attention that it was likely that I was in conflict with Section 44 of the Constitution. I have to say that he was more excited about this than I, and I must acknowledge that his knowledge of the system assisted me in leading through 3 years of my term with that hanging over my head, and it went through a whole range of convolutions of which only Harry was able to guide me personally through. He also was the person who on his advice, simply said, "In this place, Nigel, we're not sure what will happen. As long as you're open and frank with the Senate, it will treat you well." Well, I had 3 miserable years, but his advice at the end of the day was spot on the money. It is a shock to hear. I was certainly shocked to hear that Harry had passed away. It seems too soon for a man who had become an institution to leave us all behind. By old Harry Evans.
Thank you, Senator Scullion.